I'm not sure if I can trust my own memories anymore. I've thought about just leaving, packing up, and driving as far as possible to erase everything, forget this place, forget what happened. But I can't. That thing is still out there, waiting for me to slip up, to make one wrong turn or one careless mistake. It's watching me, I'm certain of it. And I can feel its eyes on me right now, even as I sit here, in my small apartment, typing these words. My name is Aaron Marshall. I used to be an ordinary guy, work a 9-to-5 job, go out with friends on weekends, that kind of thing. But that was before I went to the reservation, before I met him, before I met the Skinwalker. It all started last year when my buddy, Nick, invited me to go on a road trip with him to visit some of his family on the Navajo reservation. Nick's been my friend since college, but I didn't know much about his background until then. He's half Navajo. His mother was from a small village in northern Arizona, and his father was a white guy who worked in construction. Nick had been back to the reservation a few times over the years, but this would be my first visit. At first, I thought it would be fun. The idea of getting away from the city, hiking through the desert, maybe drinking some cold beers by a campfire, it sounded like a good time. But I didn't realize how little I knew about the place, or how much Nick was hiding from me. We arrived late in the afternoon. The sun was already dipping behind the distant mountains, casting long, strange shadows across the barren land. The air was dry, the kind of dryness that clung to your skin and made you feel like you could never truly get enough water. Nick's family lived in a small house, surrounded by a few other homes, all scattered about in the middle of nowhere. Nick's mom, a woman named Sarah, greeted us at the door. She was kind but seemed distant, her eyes always shifting around, as if she were keeping an eye on something, or someone. She didn't ask too many questions about what we were doing, and I wondered if she was used to people coming and going. We settled in for the night, and after dinner, Nick and I went outside to sit by the fire pit. The stars were more vivid out there than I'd ever seen them before, the sky an endless stretch of black velvet with tiny pinpricks of light. We talked for hours, mostly about old times, but at one point, the conversation turned towards something darker. You ever hear about skinwalkers? Nick asked suddenly, his voice low and almost hesitant. I raised an eyebrow. Skinwalkers? Like those things from the old stories? Nick nodded. Yeah, witches or shapeshifters who wear the skins of animals or other people. You ever hear the tales about them? I chuckled, mostly out of disbelief. Yeah, but I always thought it was just a myth, man, like some ghost story to scare kids. Nick didn't laugh. It's not just a story, Aaron. There's a lot of history to it, a lot of truth. My name is Alex Graves. I used to be a rational person, a practical person. I believed in the world I could see, touch, and understand. I worked as a geologist, spent my time studying rocks, minerals, and the Earth's natural processes. Everything I knew was grounded in science, in facts, and in things that could be measured and observed. But that was before I went to the desert, before I met the thing that now haunts my dreams. Now, every time I close my eyes, I can feel it there, watching, waiting. I wish I could say it was a nightmare, but it wasn't. What happened was real, more real than I care to admit, and it all started with a trip to the Navajo reservation. I've always had a sense of adventure, and when I got an invitation from a colleague to go on a field study trip out west, I didn't think twice. I was going to explore new terrain, collect rock samples, and maybe get some fresh air for a change. The invitation came from Jake, a geologist I'd worked with a few times before. He mentioned that he was heading to the reservation to study some unusual rock formations near the foothills of the Navajo Mountains. It'll be an adventure, Jake said in his usual laid-back tone. We'll camp out there for a week or so, see what we can find. Might even get a look at some ancient petroglyphs if we're lucky. Come on, you'll love it. I agreed, of course. I was eager to escape the grind of daily life for a bit, and the idea of discovering something new, something ancient, sounded like just the break I needed. The reservation was located far off the beaten path, nestled deep within the desert of northern Arizona. We drove for hours, the landscape slowly transforming from rolling hills to harsh, cracked earth as we approached the remote land. The air was dry, the sun unforgiving. Jake seemed right at home. while I felt like a fish out of water. When we finally arrived, we set up camp just outside a small, sleepy village. The locals were polite but distant, offering brief greetings before returning to their own business. I felt their eyes on us, though, and I couldn't help but feel like I was an outsider, like they knew something I didn't. I brushed it off, of course. I was a scientist. I didn't believe in superstition, in ancient myths, or folklore. I was here for the rocks. That night, after a quick dinner of camp food, Jake and I sat by the fire, the crackling flames casting long shadows on the ground. The desert was eerily quiet, the only sounds coming from the occasional caw of a distant raven or the rustling of wind through the sparse shrubs. "So," I said, attempting to break the silence, "what's the deal with this place? I've heard the locals talk about skinwalkers. Is that just some kind of ghost story?" Jake's face shifted slightly. "You believe in ghosts?" he asked, his voice quieter than usual. I snorted. "Of course not. I mean, I've heard the stories, but you don't honestly think—" "I'm not saying I believe it either," Jake interrupted, "but there's a lot of strange stuff that happens out here, things you can't explain. And the skinwalker is, well, it's something people here take very seriously. They don't like talking about it." I was about to say something else, but Jake's expression stopped me. He was staring into the fire, his face lit by the orange glow, his features unreadable. I followed his gaze. "So you've heard the stories, then?" Jake took a deep breath and nodded slowly. "I have. A long time ago, I spent some time here with a Navajo family. They told me about the skinwalkers, told me stories about how they can take the form of animals, or even people. They can mimic voices, blend in with the shadows. It's not something you want to mess with." I laughed nervously, shaking my head. "That's just a myth, Jake. You're telling me you believe in that crap?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't believe it either, not until I saw something I couldn't explain." I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean? What happened?" Jake leaned in closer to the fire, his face serious now. "I was out here on a solo trip a few years back, just exploring the area. I went deeper into the desert than I should have, and I found this cave, this strange, narrow opening in the rock. Inside, there were these old symbols, carvings on the walls. But when I was inside, I heard something moving in the dark. I felt a cold chill run down my spine as I listened." Jake didn't seem like the type of guy to tell tall tales, but I shook my head, trying to brush off the unease that was creeping up on me. "What did you hear?" I asked, my voice more curious than afraid. "A voice," Jake said quietly, his eyes distant. "A woman's voice. It called my name, softly at first, then louder and louder until it was almost screaming. I turned to run, but when I looked back, I saw something that wasn't human." My heart started to race, my rational mind already trying to explain it away, but Jake's expression made me hesitate. "It was a person," he continued, "or at least it looked like one. But the way it moved, the way it was crouching, hunched over, it was wrong, Alex. I barely made it out of there alive, and I'm telling you, there's something out here, something that's not natural." I let out a shaky laugh, though it didn't come out quite as confidently as I'd intended. "Okay, Jake, that's enough for tonight. You've got me a little spooked now." Jake didn't laugh with me. He didn't smile. Instead, he gave me a long, intense look, the kind of look that made me feel like he was trying to convey a warning without words. "I'm serious, Alex," he said, his voice low. "You have to be careful out here. Don't ignore the signs. Trust me, some things don't belong in this world." I tried to shake it off, to laugh it off, but the truth is, I didn't sleep that night.
As the final echoes of the tale fade into the darkness, remember this: in the shadows where fear takes root, the true horror lies not in the creatures that lurk, but in the darkness within ourselves. We tell these stories not just to scare or entertain, but to confront the fears that we try so hard to ignore. So as you step back into the light of the real world, carry with you the lessons of the night. The monsters we create are reflections of our deepest anxieties, and the strength to overcome them is within each of us. Sleep well, and remember, in the realm of fear, we are the true masters of our fate. Good night, and may your dreams be free of shadows. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to like, subscribe and click the notification bell for you to see my future update on this channel. Stay safe and always remember to lock your doors.